Welcome, football fans. Buckle up for another hard-hitting episode of Player 54 Podcast, an independent show focused solely on alternative and opportunity football. From a sunny Southwest Florida studio, here is your host, Michael Lathrop.
Hello, football fans. This is episode 132, Bold CFL Changes. Welcome back to another episode of Player 54 Podcast. Today we welcome CJME and CKOM news reporter and the Green Zone, the Blitz podcast co-host, Britton Gray, to discuss last week's Canadian Football League's announcement of notable rule changes and more. Welcome back, Britton. I appreciate you taking the time to return to the show to discuss the Canadian Football League's recent announcement and how it has been received by diehard CFL supporters.
Yeah, it's big news coming out when I was actually during our Riders bye week or just after there. So I actually wasn't at work when this all came out, but I got a chance to react to it.
Yeah, there is a lot to unpack here. So for the sake of the listeners tuning in, allow me to set the table for this discussion, okay? By going over what the Canadian Football League's announcement consisted of back on September 22nd, of their upcoming bold moves to evolve its game. These changes will be phased in, first wave being effective in 2026 and the anticipated final wave being in 2027. So looking at the first phase here for 2026, the Rouge modifications, I'm just going to read a quick snippet here. No point awarded for missing a field goal attempt, and no point awarded for punts sailing or rolling through the back or sides of an end zone without being touched by the returner. Therefore, the only way a point will be awarded is if a field goal or kickoff or punt settles in the end zone. The 35-second play clock automatically resetting at the end of the previous play. And the opposite field team benches. No more sharing of sidelines. All right, Britton. As an American supporter, I have my thoughts, okay? But those of us off the border do not really make up the significant majority by any means. So seeing that the heart and soul of the CFL fan base is up there with you and looking at the first phase, what are your thoughts and that of your countrymen?
Well, we'll start. These ones aren't as maybe controversial as the ones we'll get to in 2027. That's where the major rule changes that you're going to notice a little bit more are going to take effect. Let's go one by one before we get into the overall how people are feeling. The opposite field team benches is such a no-brainer. The fact that I think there's 5 different stadiums, maybe 6, where the field or the benches are on the same side. There was an incident earlier this year where chirping happens, the coach let a player know, and then it was very heated. I'm shocked that more brawls haven't broken out because of this, but this just makes a ton of sense when you just look at it. I don't think there's much issue to having the benches on opposite sides of the fields. The 35-second play clock, that's going to be quite the change when you're watching it as a fan. So right now, the CFL has a 20-second play clock, but it has to get whistled in by an official. So the game clock still runs despite the fact that the play clock isn't running. And that's where they kind of went with this, is to get more plays in the game and get the flow, because there are times where a minute 10, a minute 20 actually runs off the game clock, but only 20-second play clock. So this will be consistent now, much more like the NFL. That's why I'm a fan of it, because I've noticed that the 20-second play clock, it was essentially a myth almost, because as I mentioned, the game clock runs. This one's a little bit different though, because for CFL, the endings of these games are always great. And part of that is the 20-second play clock, because after 3 minutes, the game clock does not run, no matter if it's a run, a pass inbounds, or whatever. It will not run until the 20-second play clock gets whistled in. So a team can get a playoff in 2 seconds because they have time to huddle, they have time to call the plays before more time runs off the game clock. That's where there's a lot of concern, right? That's where people who don't want to see the ending of CFL games change, what will this look like? Will teams be allowed to do what the NFL does? You can kneel out the final 2 minutes in the NFL and American leagues. They don't want that to happen, the CFL fan base. I don't think it will. I'm pretty sure the official will still have to whistle in the play clock, but we'll have to wait and see on that because that's a cause of concern. And I mean the Rouge. I like the change to the Rouge. They get rid of what I refer to as the loser point, where you miss a field goal and you get rewarded with a point just because you booted it through the end zone. I've seen games end on that. The Riders, who I cover, lost a game last year because the kicker booted a field goal. It went wide left, but he booted it far enough that, hey, he gets a point. They won anyway. So those are those rule changes. As I mentioned, people are very protective of the Rouge. They have been up in Canada. It's a unique thing, but I like this rule change. The 35-second play clock, I think once people see it and get to know what it does in a game, they'll be more for it. But this is, like I said, phase 1 isn't kind of the controversial ones. Phase 2 is a little bit more because there is, I think, legitimate concerns that the CFL is losing a bit of its uniqueness, a bit of those quirks that come with it that's separated from other spring leagues in America, from the NFL. And so, yeah, it's interesting, but once we get into phase 2, that's where we can really discuss the changes.
Yeah, I'll just throw my 2 cents in there. I thought phase 1, it's not, groundbreaking. It's not earth shattering, that type of stuff. It's not, I mean, change is inevitable. And if that's the type of change, it just, again, I'm from south of the border here. So, my opinion is not worth much, but watching the game, I don't see it. The bench thing, when you look at a stadium and it looks like it should have been on both sides anyway, like I don't understand why it was on one side anyway. Like that never made sense to me. But
so teams could actually, like, part of it is advertising. Teams could sell that advertising as a premium along the other side because there's no benches covering it. Right. So that's part of it as well.
So financial, and I know there's a lot of financial avenues too, obviously, whether it's field signage or whatever else. But yeah, let's move on to phase 2, 2027. So everyone's got some time to digest it. I don't think that's going to help anymore, with what's coming. But to essentially go over 2027's phase, goalpost moves to the back of the end zones. The field changes. 15-yard end zones, the shortening of the field to 100 yards. Yes, the width is not changing, right? We can get into stuff. But looking at these, you're right. Stuff that is clearly Canadian is changed. It significantly changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the part where a lot of people, a couple days later, are more angry about it, I think, because we are going to see different fields. We are going to see a more American product. Let's call it what it is. It's going to look more American than what the Canadian fans are used to watching in the CFL. And another thing that has been lost in this is minor football, high school football, youth sports, which is our college football up here, junior football. They all have to make a choice now of if they go to the CFL field or if they keep the 110 fields with the end zones, the goalposts at the front, and who's paying for that? Who's paying for some of these fields that, frankly, some of them were just installed places to get redone? That's a decision that's going to happen across the country here. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. But in terms of the CFL, where do we start with this? People are mad at this one. I'm in the camp of I'm willing to at least let's see what it looks like. Let's see if this helps, if what they're saying is true, that it will lead to more scoring. Let's see that. But I get where a lot of people are mad because that 55-yard line, it's a Canadian football game when you see a 55-yard line. It's uniquely Canadian. The goalposts at the front of the end zone, uniquely Canadian. So people are mad about that. I will say, we'll start with the goalposts. I was always a fan of moving them to the back. I think it was a safety hazard. I think it limits what offenses can do because if a ball hits the goalpost, it's just dead. No one can catch it off the bounce or anything like that. I thought it made a lot of sense, but in order to do that, you did have to reduce the end zones to 15 yards because otherwise 20-yard end zone, it's a 20-yard field goal from the 1. So it makes a lot more sense when you have to reduce the end zones because of that, and shortening the field down to 100 yards. And I like that as well. I'm not as big of a we need to keep the 55-yard line. As long as the field's the width, it's still wider. The spirit of the CFL is still there because you still need that extra player out there. You still need to it's just a bigger field. It's a lot more open. That's still there. But yeah, people are mad at that. But one thing I always say with that, they've reduced the field. It gives you the opportunity to expand places. At Halifax, where they've been trying to get somewhere out in the Maritimes, they don't have a CFL size venue, so they're not going to build one. They do have a new soccer stadium going up. This field can now fit inside a soccer stadium much more easily. You just add 10,000, 12,000 more seats to it. You can get a CFL football team there. Everyone doesn't want to talk about U.S. expansion. There's a lot of places in the U.S. that you can now open it up to because your field now fits into some places where they play college football, where they don't have an NFL team, where you can find some spots. So I know people are against U.S. expansion because they've seen it happen here once in the CFL. Apparently, it nearly led to the death of the league. I was but a young lad when the CFL had American teams, so I don't remember that, but it's something no one wants to talk about. But that's what I like about this, is that you can maybe get to a Halifax, to a Quebec, because you're not convincing any city to spend $300 million on building a new CFL stadium.
You look at the end zones, but I also see it that it's really standardizing the end zones too, because we've seen the slightly different shapes, right? So by shortening the end zone or field, therefore, even the venues that currently exist in the CFL, now the field will look the same everywhere. All right. So, I mean, I look at it that it really brings that in. Yes, you're changing the game. No doubt, right? The length of the field, the goalposts, a different, another element that, the offenses had to deal with. I mean, heck, a defender, we've seen the defensive backs running into them too, but like you said, safety. But now that does open up the field. But you're right. It is some changes. I don't know if they had to do away with the 55. But okay, they did. But the end zone thing, I think it just seems like it's right, and let's be fair. They haven't touched the 12-man. They haven't touched the width, right? They're not touching what I call wide open motion, right? There's a lot of the things that make the CFL to me as an American tuning in, right? So it kind of keeps that ingrained. But yeah, I mean, it will look different, and we'll have to see what that looks like. But people tend to be very passionate about the things they love, and any change to those things generate a heightened response. And I'm certain you're really seeing it. Social media allows us to kind of get that, but I mean, you're probably seeing it in a way, just walking, to the local store, walking down the street, right? Whatever. You're probably just, the fact that you're in the space, you probably hear about it more from just your neighbors or something leaving the house, right? So, it's just gonna be natural for them to feel the way they do and voice their concerns and displeasure. But to be fair, the Canadian Football League has had its fair share of struggles, and it has been losing money for a number of years now. History and tradition are important, but so is an entity's stability in their future. So, change has been hinted and essentially been looming for years. I mean, there's no secret that they've been debating it, right, Brenton? I mean, if I know that here, you guys had to have known, right, that they're debating on, I think that was the fear for a while. Now that it's here, it'll be phased in over the next 2 years. How necessary do you think they are, right? The changes were thought about, but now looking at it, how necessary were they for maybe stabilizing the CFL now and for the foreseeable future?
It's really tough for me to say they were necessary because this league's been around for so long. So I'm not saying it's a place of necessity, but it's a place of trying to move forward and trying to do something different, because you're right. I'm in Saskatchewan. the CFL works here. The CFL, this is where it works. This is one of two markets that we know that money is made, and it's made pretty good here in Saskatchewan. So, yes, there's a lot of people here who are against these changes. Don't change anything. Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, they're kind of their own beasts. It works there. I get why you don't want to change it. In Toronto, Ottawa, BC, there's other markets. It's just not working. So what do you try to do? You try a little bit of something that changes the game, but keeps the spirit of the CFL intact. Like you mentioned, the 12 players on the field, the waggle, which is the motion before the snap, wider field, the punts, the quarterback punts that we saw one this year where Trevor Harris punted the football from the quarterback position. There's still the spirit of the CFL there, but I do think that changes had to happen a little bit. I'm okay with this. I'm not okay if they want to go to 4 downs. If they start skinnying in the field. Those are changes you're just doing to become more like the NFL. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of leagues try to be the NFL and fail. The NFL is such its own beast. Good luck being the little brother to that. It's tough to be. So with these changes, I like it. And part of it for me also, when I look at this, they want to get into an American TV deal somewhere. They want a streaming service to pick them up. They want to find a way to get more into the American audience. And also some of that US TV money. They want a TV rights deal that's worth a pretty good dollar amount. I just think this move, it's going to look more American, but I think that's an easier product to sell to an American broadcaster, to sell to someone who wants the NFL. If you look more like the NFL, they might be more willing to pay. Now, I say all that, and I want to mention, everyone who has gripes with it, who has concerns, absolutely. I get where they're coming from with that. They're valid concerns to have because they're changing something you love. They're changing something that, as far as you know, it's worked for over 100 years. Why change it? But I do think that this is indeed a modernizing of the CFL.
So necessity, maybe not, but let's try. I mean, we're not the governors, right? We're not on the board. And they definitely did not reach out to anybody to get their input before making a decision, right? And we've seen that circulating.
They didn't even talk to the players and coaches about making a decision.
So let's just try to put on our hat that if we were, right? Do you think this is more about, like you said, television, trying to fluff the team ledgers? Like these moves are really for the financial reasons? You know, like you said, the American market, TV audience, maybe sponsors. I mean, I don't know what's being said. Like, yeah, Toronto's, you know, for us Americans to come up, Manhattan, miniature Manhattan, or, 2.0, Manhattan version, kind of, right? I mean, like you go to other cities, Montreal significantly different, right? I'm just saying, like, a guy from me that comes from the Northeast, it's very easy to get to somebody significantly different, right? Quebec City, and like totally different vibes, right? But is it really more financially, you think, driven for them? Really more than they think that it's just interest in certain markets?
I think it has to be financial. What other reason do you make this move, right? If everyone is making money, you don't make any moves because everyone's making money. So I think this is to do that. I mean, there's been talk since, when was it, 2020 during the pandemic, a merger with the XFL. Let's not forget those rumors, and where there's smoke, there's fire. And I do think that there was interest from some Board of Governors members to do that. Didn't ultimately happen, but I think that there's certain markets, Toronto and MLSE, they're kind of its unique thing, where MLSE, they own the Maple Leafs. They own pretty much every major sporting thing in Toronto, including the Argonauts. They want some more money. Everywhere wants to start making money. As far as we know, the only markets that made money were Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. Everywhere else is privately owned, so they don't have to say their financials, but they claim to be losing money. So you take them at their word, I guess. But it's about building money. Like I said, the CFL's a gate-driven league. They get a lot of their money and revenue from getting people out to the stadiums. I think they want to change that a little bit. I think they want some more money from maybe not just their Canadian television partner, but an American one. Get on streaming. Streamers are buying up everything under the sun. How do you get more people interested in your product? This feels like maybe just making it a little bit easier for a wider audience to digest because they're already conditioned to the NFL. They know what an NFL field looks like. And then, like I said, part of it is expansion. I think that expansion has been big on this league for a while. Halifax has kind of been one they've been really trying to get out to. And I think just the reducing the field gets you into a soccer stadium instead of convincing city council to spend $300 million. Sorry about the dogs. They're also mad about the rule changes.
No, hey, I got three myself, so I get it. Well, the reason why I asked that, right? Money makes the world, move, right? Everything's about money. I get it, but I wonder sometimes, looking at how sports evolve, I can't help but wonder: is it because something's bigger, right? Standardizing the game to align with the sport globally, the inclusion of flag football coming to the Olympics. Now, I understand it's flag football, but perhaps that is, cracking the door open for a future edition of the traditional 11v11 football in a few Olympics. And I say that because I understand the United States, right? But the NFL is really pushing globally now. NCAA football is starting to play some games internationally. We see ELF, which will be EFA. Some of the teams might be breaking away, but we see a bunch of different leagues popping up more and more and holding some stability in Europe. You got the X League in Japan. You have the couple different leagues. I think there's like two different leagues, but even the college game is pretty strong in Mexico. So looking at this, I mean, is there anything that they're thinking, well, man, we need our league to be just as much front and center as we're heading into an Olympics? That the Olympics are going to draw anything like Canada is clear cut number 2. Let's not forget about Canada. Do you think there's a sliver of that tied to this?
I don't know if the Olympics have to deal with it as much as you mentioned the international markets. I think this opens it up to possibly going over and partnering with some of those minor leagues that frankly the NFL doesn't care about, right? The NFL is so big, they're not going to want to partner with a bunch of these leagues probably, but the CFL can. How can they get involved? And then you can bring players over. That was the big thing with former Commissioner Randy Ambrosie. Before the pandemic, they called it CFL 2.0, which is getting global players. Every team now has to have one global player who's not from Canada or the US on their roster. They've made this move before, and yes, that's part of it too. Standardizing it so that the guys in Europe, well, they're not just focusing on the NFL because they play 11 on 11. Come to the CFL. We have pretty much the same stuff, a little quirks here and there, sure, but pretty much the same. Is there a partnership for a Canada versus Europe World Cup of football, for an example, right? Where all the fields are the same, the rules are standardized. Maybe the Olympics are going to be big, but it's still flag football. Hopefully Canada comes away with a medal. Hey, that's a really good flag football team we have from up here. But I think when you look at the CFL as a whole, there is a little bit of, that international partnership and standardizing the field length to maybe you can invite a European All-Star or Canadian All-Stars go over there maybe. It's all interesting. We're all kind of still digesting it. I don't know exactly what the end goal is right now.
Yeah, I don't think the Olympics is going to see it. Obviously, 2028 is going to be flag football. It's going to have to be at least flag football for, at least 2, maybe 3 Olympics for they entertain that. But I just see that the game is growing internationally, that sooner or later, it's cracked. It's got its foot in the door. But how soon would you want to get ahead of that? Again, we're really getting the cart in front of the horse here. But I mean, I'm also just trying to look at what angles. Now, of course, we're not on the governor's board, and so we weren't part of those discussions. But there's got to be, at least a number of factors that kind of went into this. What do you think before 2020? I mean, you guys are you're in the heat of it. Like you teams are still trying to figure out playoff, who's in, who's not. So you guys are in the thick of it. Do you think the off seasons where people really start to digest this a little bit more, or or is it just too big? Is it going to take some time to really think about before 2026 here? And we know that's not the big ones, but I mean, like, do you think there would be another uproar, like when people really start to think about it, like when it sets in, okay, well, this season's over, and now we have nothing but to stew on the fact that this is coming.
I mean, that's tough to say because there's already quite the uproar. There's a petition out there to get rid of the rule changes already. There's people on the internet posting that they're taking signs saying Stuart Johnston needs to resign, keep our 55-yard line. People are mad at these rule changes, and now the offseason, I think that's going to be where a lot of players and coaches finally take a look at things, because I've asked the players and coaches. They're like, we're focused on Edmonton. We have a game to play this weekend. We'll deal with these rule changes when they get here. Is what the coaches are essentially thinking, because they are in the thick of it. It's going to be interesting because the rule changes are coming. I don't see how these get overturned because of a petition, but I mean, you never know. I'm very interested in seeing 2027 and when that season kicks off, because this is different. Some fans have already said they're not renewing their season tickets. They're done. The CFL's dead to them. We've heard that on the text line and the phone lines. They're done with this league. If I wanted to watch the NFL, I'll go watch the NFL. So some people say they're done. We'll see. But I don't know how much more angry people are going to get, because there's already a lot of anger from some CFL diehards. And then there's, two camps that agree, yeah, things need to change. And so we'll see what happens kickoff next year. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there will be a protest outside Mosaic Stadium here for week 1 next season.
That was going to be my next question, was once we wrap up this season, get through the offseason, because it will be. I mean, all coaches, anytime there's new rule changes, even somewhat minor, they always have to take the offseason, go into camp. It's not just how coaches are trying to adapt, in the offseason, preparing things, but it's really once you sit down, you try to implement it with players. I was going to ask though, what do you think once the season kicks off in 2026? Like you're talking about that you can see some picketing or some signs, or I wonder, you'll see the old brown bag coming out over some people's. I'm ashamed to be a CFL, like, because this is America's game. That like how are this?
Yeah.
Right. I just wondered, do you think once it kind of gets rolling, some people just kind of will just zip it up a little bit and just kind of go with it? I mean, like, that it's your DNA up there, right? This is the Canadian blood. So what do you think will come from the Canadian supporters once it's in swing? Do you think it's just like kind of be mumbling under your breath, but just kind of just going with it?
I think so. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of anger right now. You don't want to see things change, but I mean, as we've said on the show, as was mentioned, your fandom to the CFL was really the 55-yard line. The rouge has changed, and you're no longer going to be a fan of your team. Really, that's where you draw the line. And so that's where I think of it. The CFL spirit is still there. There's still a lot of great rules that make it unique. There's still a lot of stuff there. I don't think that this was the change that should be the death knell for some people's season tickets, or they're no longer going to support the league. This is when the league needs support, because they're trying something new. They're trying something innovative to get more fans to watch. And I think you should be supporting the league in trying to do that, because this league hasn't been financially successful for a little bit here. We have to call it like it is. Like, yeah, it works in Saskatchewan and Winnipeg. That's 2 of 9. Everywhere else, we hear about them losing money. This league needs support right now because they're trying something different. If it's that much of a failure, who's to say they can't 10 years down the road go back to things? We'll have to wait and see what happens. But I just think that it's a little ridiculous that just because there's no longer the 55-yard line, you're getting rid of season tickets you held since the 70s. Change is scary, but sometimes it's needed, and that's where I'm at. Let's wait and see what happens. Now, if they bring in 4 downs, we can have a talk about that's no longer the CFL, But until that happens, until they change the ratio, they skinny the field, there's a lot of other things that I think that are no-goes you can't touch before I think people should really be that mad about some of these things.
Yeah, I mean, the rules have changed. They changed the hashes, right? I mean, so I mean, it's not like we haven't seen anything in quite some time. I mean, like, I'm not trying to act like it's been earth shattering, but some things have kind of been slightly in the works for a little bit. Like Hash's first happened, I mean, from what I remember hearing, a bunch of the coaches weren't too happy about it, right? Because it kind of figures that. But again, you just got to kind of work through it, and we'll have to see. Time will tell. Time will tell. It really will be the thing. So the Elks, definitely on the outside looking in. That's my soft spot. I won't say I'm a diehard by any means, but that's the team that if I have a rooting interest, that's who I'm tuning into. Any shot? I know they pulled it off, over the weekend, but any shot trying to get in, you think?
I mean, there's a chance. Don't get me wrong. They're playing really well football. Right? Yeah. Do I think they do? It might be too little too late for the Elks, but hey, good on them. Cody Fajardo, great human being. Got a chance to talk to him and get to know him when he was here in Saskatchewan. Great guy. He has that team rolling. Never say never, but you have to catch Winnipeg and BC, who are playing some of their best football right now.
Right. Well, before I let you go, I just want to give you an opportunity, kind of, do you have any remaining concerns, thoughts pertaining to these major changes or anything else tied to the, CFL? Just give you your little soapbox moment just to kind of, if it's sitting there bothering you, whatever, go ahead, get it off your chest.
No, not about the rule changes. I've said I'm willing to at least see them. I get where people's anger comes from, but I'm one of the younger demographic they're trying to reach a little bit, right? That they're trying to get more people my age and younger to get involved. Let's just see how it goes. In terms of the CFL, it's great right now. It's a playoff race. Everyone is still in it. As we mentioned, the Elks, still a chance. It's week 18. Only three games left for some teams, 4 for some. It's ramping up, and then CFL playoffs are amazing. You like snow games? We have a lot of snow games up here in Canada, and the playoffs are super fun. Grey Cup in mid-November. Now's the time. If you haven't watched the CFL football, tune in now because a lot of teams are really finding their stride at this point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm saying, they're in the thick of it, alongside. But this is where I think everything gets interesting. It's who slips, who gets hot at the right time. It doesn't matter what league, what sport, but I mean, like, this is always an interesting time. But you're right. I might be in Florida now, but I love fall weather, and the elements begin to change a tad bit, and that adds another layer, another little bit of strategy in there, right? If you're more of a passing game all out, well, the ball is a little bit different when it gets a little bit more wet, whether it's due to rain or snow. So time will tell. Well, Britton, I appreciate you taking the time to return to the show to discuss Canadian Football League's bold and significant changes to the game that are coming up over the next few seasons. There is a few months of games remaining here for the more traditional rules. So I hope everyone can enjoy it while they can and not let this, ruin, 2025 so much. But if your schedule allows it, I would love to have you come back maybe next fall. Once you get a few months, get some games under, and maybe we can revisit how things are going. What's the temperature? Is the temperature rising? Is the heat in the kitchen kind of getting too unbearable? Or it just, I'd like to see how it's impacting the game and just the league support as a whole.
I'll let you know if fans are on strike outside Mosaic Stadium next season.
Right. All right. Well, before I let you go, if you could just remind everybody that's tuning in, just take a moment to share with them where they could find you and the various coverage, because you cover the Canadian Football League or the Riders specifically. So where can they find you to do so?
Now you can find me on X. It's just at my name, Britton Gray. Me and the host of our sports show, The Green Zone, do a podcast every week, kind of rider specific, but go around the CFL. It's called The Blitz. You can find that Green Zone SK for Saskatchewan. So Green Zone SK on YouTube. It's on Spotify, wherever you can find your podcasts. And find my work on CJME.com or CKOM.com, Regina and Saskatoon stations. And that's where you can find all my CFL stuff.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, Britton.
Not a problem.
After sitting tight for a few days, I reached out to Britton to get a legitimate feel of how the Canadian Football League's new bold changes have been received by loyal CFL supporters. Many people do not handle change well. However, change is inevitable. Well thought out changes can certainly improve the league. Like many, I hope these moves are eventually embraced and stabilize the league, as well as position the Canadian Football League for many more seasons to come. That concludes another show. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to having everyone back for an all-new episode of Player 54 Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into today's show. You can support the show and our partners by using code PLAYER54 at checkout at any of the following websites: RoyalRetros.com, where you can save 15%, TrueVictory.com, where you can save 15%, BuckDuck.com, where you can save 20%, ImpactMouthguards.com, where you can save 10%, HobbyArmor.com, where you can save 5%, JustMeatJerky.com, where you can save 10%. Don't forget to follow, like, subscribe and rate Player 54 Podcast on your platforms of choice. Do you have a question or topic you would like to have discussed on the show? Message us via social media or send an email to player54podcast@gmail.com.